What's up guys, Joe here back in the video. Today's video is what if Lightning and Joe picked the teams in the Revenge Island. So hear me out on this theory. This suggestion was made by Tulip Mango 8876. I hope I said your name right. And if I didn't, I do apologize. So, it's a bit hard to say because unlike Zoe, Mike, or even Cameron, Joe and Lightning aren't exactly the most likable people, but I'll be using in-universe and how I think they would operate and think on their decisions. And let me know in the comments if you think I made the teams accurately or not, and tell me how I could improve next time on another more what ifs as well. A what if like this, because I do want to improve as well. So, how I'll do this is I'm going to have it where it's first rat, first maggot. Basically, I'm just gonna have them pick. So I think I'll let Lightning pick first, just because Lightning. You're gonna see why I got this. So Lightning's gonna pick Brick because he wants a strong player. Joe's gonna counter this by picking for Zoe. I think Zoe, she seems probably pretty. They seem to get on. Lightning is gonna pick Sam because it was shown that they're kind of friends. Joe's gonna pick, I think, Mike, because she would see that Mike is pretty athletic. Lightning would select Anne Maria, I think, at this point. Lightning would want a girl on the team. And I think Joe would pick Scott because she would see him as a strong player. Then he picks Cameron because before their rivalry he seemed to be nice enough to help him in the water. Joe would pick Dawn. Lightning would pick B. Joe would pick Dakota. And Lightning gets Stacy. So that is the teams in this season. And let me know in the comments if you agree with my decisions. Episode 1, this is basically the episode where they have to make the totem poles. B would still do his strategy like the original, and they all still slide down. The rats get there first, and they lose due to bad luck. So everyone votes for Stacy again, so Stacy's still eliminated in this timeline. It's a shame, it really sucks for Stacy. There will be some changes, but that's that. So Stacy's out. Episode 2. So let's run everything up on out. Brick and B get a point for Brick Pistons Pants and B admitting Beverly. Cameron would still obviously admit that he's everything after the challenge is over, which annoys everybody else. Scott would also fall into the water and get attacked by Fang. The second part would be the obstacle course. So Scott would still be throwing challenges because he likes that strategy and he would still come up with that. So at the start it would be Lightning would think the weakest to strongest, so he'd book Cameron and I'm going to say Dakota. They race to the race and they would give it to Zoe and Sam. They then end up racing, advancing, which I think they would give it to Dawn. No, Scott would want Dawn to stay at the back. So he'd give it to Dawn. Then it would end up being Dawn and B. Then it would be Scott and Anne Maria. Scott would still be slowing down for about 15 seconds and give the rats a head. It would be Brick and Joe and Mike and Lightning. Lightning would slam dunk it, so he would end up running for the rats. Scott would blame Dakota as she was the reason they were slowing down. But would he want to get rid of Dakota here? Dawn's not suspicious of him yet, so I think everyone votes for Dakota, like they do originally. So Dakota's out. And that's that. Episode 3. So B would still come up with the same strategy to get to the rats to the top. Dawn would still save the beetle. I expect the rats still win the first part of the challenge. The next part would be the flag. Scott would still be trying to sabotage his own team at this point. Joe would get the flag. And the significant thing in this episode, B melts the mirror, but then gets sabotaged by Scott, because Scott's throwing charges on the rats. But now that him and B aren't on the same team, Scott wouldn't be sabotaging B here. So I'm actually more inclined to believe the rats win the challenge. So it's kind of funny, by Scott not being on the same team, the rats win this challenge. Scott would get Joe and Dawn. Scott would be in a bit of trouble. He realizes that Zoe and Mike are very close. So Scott would want to be nice to someone, mainly Joe, and I think Scott would be able to convince Joe, hey, let's make an alliance to get rid of Zoe or Mike. Which I think Scott would actually vote for Dawn. So I think Dawn, these three, vote for Joe, because Zoe, it was shown that Zoe and Dawn have a bit of a friendship. Joe and Scott, though, would vote for Dawn. Joe is eliminated. So Joe's out. So it's kind of funny, by Joe picking the teams, she would have gone on episode 3, which is crazy to think about. Episode 4. So this is the scavenger hunt. Dawn would still get captured. B can't speak, so I don't think, again, I could see lightning climb up the tree instead of Cameron being thrown in. Scott would still be sabotaging his own team and trying to slow them down. Zoe still gets captured, and then Vito would come out. I think Anne-Maria and Vito would be still making out, even if they're on the different teams. And Scott would want to even want that to happen. So Scott's on his own, just trying to do the challenge. I expect that B would just tie a rope to everyone. And I expect Brick would try to go back for... He wouldn't go back for Dawn Zoe this time, because they're not on the same team. So everyone gets to the cave, and which Scott still gets tied up on, and everyone escapes on the rats, except Anne-Maria. So they win the challenge. Which really annoys the rest of the team. Would Scott want to frame Dawn for the items, or would he wait for B to get framed? And I think here, Scott's going to try and frame Dawn, not knowing it's a non-elimination. So I think what would happen here is the rats win, because Brick's not broke his code of honor. And I'm thinking that Mike, Zoe, and Dawn vote for Scott. I think Scott would be going home. He hasn't got the immunity idol. He hasn't sabotaged Dawn yet. He would try to convince Dawn that Mike's making out with Anne-Marie for the challenge, but it would backfire. He would be going home. But this is an elimination round. This means Scott is now put into the Rats team, which is rather funny, because this is the team he was on originally. So Scott will be put onto the Rats, and this is no elimination. Episode 4. We can delete episode 4. Episode 5. So Scott would go to his new team, realize he needs to get rid of someone. He wants to get rid of Cameron and B because they're smart people. And I think he would still go for B because Scott doesn't like B originally, so I think he would still want to get rid of B here. So the first part of the challenge would be going in the suit. I expect Dawn would go in it, and Mike would have to pump for that. Lightning would pump like the original, and Brick goes under. I expect that Scott would talk to Anne-Maria, saying, you should actually go to Vito. And then it's explained that basically she's accidentally pushed him, bringing out Vita. And basically here, Scott would say his tooth's missing, Lightning's powder goes missing, Sam's game console, and Amber's hairbrush. So the rats would win the first part of the maggots with the first part of the challenge. The maggots win the first part of the challenge. Second part is the... So... And Scott would still say his shots way off. Svetlana would still get the points. I expect the maggots to win this challenge. Scott would say to be what's under your pillow. Be surprised. They get mad and vote him off because of it. So B's out. Episode 6. So this is basically where they have to dress up the Yeti, the maggot, for the first part of the challenge. Anne Maria would still do the makeup on that. And the Yeti. I expect the rats will win the first part of the challenge. Then it will be then turned to saving Lindsay after the talent show. Sam's brain's still gone to mush after not touching a game console. And I assume that attracting the Yeti, it would be like that strategy wouldn't be there now. Scott, Lightning, and Brick would still fall down. Sam still has his gamer mode. I expect Cameron and Maria not to get to the top. Dawn would get to the top because Dawn can talk to the Yeti. So I think Dawn can just calm down the Yeti, which makes me believe that the maggots would win this challenge. So the maggots win. But this elimination is actually important because I think everyone still votes for Sam, which is fair enough. But I'm going to spin... Scott was already swapped on this team, so that wouldn't work. I'm going to spin a wheel to decide who would be swapped on the rats and maggots now. So let's begin. So I spin the wheel to decide who would be swapped over. I thought this was the first way to write the episode. Obviously, Chris wouldn't let Scott switch over, so that makes sense. So Lightning. And it's between Zoe, Mike, and Dawn. Dawn, okay. So Lightning and Dawn would swap teams, and meaning that Sam would still get eliminated. Episode 7. So episode 7 rolls around, and this is where a terrible mine is a terrible thing. Basically, they have to get the golden fish statues out of the mines. So Brick would still slide down like the original. I expect that they would have Dawn would be carrying the fireflies. Lightning would cause a cave-in now on the maggots team. And Anne-Marie still gets captured by herself as a kill. Obviously, Brooke would want to go out to save her. And still getting the fake diamond. And Scott still throws the challenge after he gets to the golden squish. Lightning gets the golden squish, but because when Zoe and Mike get attacked, Lightning is their teammate. So Lightning would now save them. He has no real reason he cares nothing by leaving them. So they get out. So those three get out. And Brick goes to save Anne Maria. So I think the maggots actually win this challenge. So the maggots win. Because Brick didn't sacrifice himself, didn't go back to save Mike and Zoe, he's not getting voted off. I think Scott would want to get rid of Dawn more than Brick. So I think Scott convinces Cameron, because Cameron's probably suspicious of Mike's personality, even though they're all different teams, to vote for Dawn. But Anne Maria would still quit. Dawn would try to convince Cameron to vote for Scott. But I think Cameron doesn't really know Dawn that well. He's not really close to Zoe and Mike as much in this timeline. So he's convinced by Scott to vote for Dawn. And I think Dawn's out. And Anne Maria quits. Episode 8. Dakota Zoe still comes back as a player. And she's put onto the Rats team. So episode 8 rolls around. And they have to use the rafts like the original. I expect Lightning would get attacked by the squid. I expect the rats to win the first part of the challenge. Second part would be that Dakota Zoe would still throw the alligator through the bush. Scott would still be sabotaging his team because he likes that strategy. And I expect that the maggots win the challenge because the rats are digging in the wrong location. Cameron would vote for Scott after Dawn's warning. Brick would probably vote for Scott. I think everyone just votes off the Codazoid here. So I think the Codazoid would actually be eliminated. Actually. Yeah, the Codazoid. They would see her as a bigger threat. Merge day. And Scott still has immunity, so I'll keep that in mind. It's the merge cast. Bye bye maggots, bye bye rats. I'm happy one of my favourite characters, Brick, makes it to merge. The only difference we have in this cast is Brick is here instead of Joe. So, episode 10. So, I'm thinking that Scott would still learn about Mike's personalities and he's still blackmail him throughout the entire episode because Cameron was sucks. Actually, I don't think Cameron's not on the same team, so Scott would know that Mike has multiple personality disorder. So he wouldn't know yet. He can't blackmail him. And I think Mike is close to telling Zoe on how he feels, thanks to Dawn. So Michael told Zoe in this episode that he has multiple personality disorder. Lightning was to get caught in the cage by himself. I think Brick wins immunity. I think Brick wins with his military training. He wins. I think Brick wins immunity. And Scott convinces Lightning and Brick to vote for Mike. I think Zoe and Mike are going to vote for Scott. I think they convince Cameron to vote for Scott. And I think Brick would also vote for Scott. And Lightning would vote for Cameron. Oh no, Lightning. But Scott has the immunity idol. So it's over now whoever Scott decides to eliminate. And I think out of this group of people, the person Scott would eliminate would be Cameron. Because Cameron's really smart and can be a threatening player. Zoe and Mike are a power couple, and I think Scott... Actually, no, I don't think gets rid of Cameron. I think that Scott convinced Brick and Lightning to vote for Mike. He convinces Cameron. I think he might... Yeah, Scott uses his idol. He gets rid of Mike. Episode 10, basically this is the challenge. They have to make the pieces and they have to fly across the plane and stop Heather. So this is... Brick would have the rocket. Zoe would still take Scott out like she was originally. Cameron crashes through the... I actually think Brick wins. I think instead of Cameron, Brick wins immunity. So I think Brick wins. But I think Scott, being a Scott, will start to talk to people. May Lightning Brick and explain, if it comes down to it, who is Zoe and Cameron going to pick in the finale? And I think they realised they would see that Zoe is a more threatening player than Cameron. And I think Zoe would have to go here. So Zoe's out. No, actually, yeah, Zoe's out. So Zoe's eliminated. Would Zoe be out? I think no, he gets rid of Cameron. I think Cameron's smarter. He seeks Cameron. Yeah, Zoe's eliminated, so Zoe's out. Episode 11. This is making the meals and racing to the end of the finish line. Scott would still be sabotaging everybody else. I don't think Brick and S would be good at cooking challenge, so I expect Scott would still win. Cameron would still make that deal with Lightning like the original, and they go off. I think it's close. I think Brick wins. I'm gonna say Brick wins again with his military training because Brick's pretty fast. He has like a 5 o'clock jog with Joe, so I think Brick actually wins. But I just think everyone's gonna vote off Scott because he's the biggest threat on that team. So Scott would actually be eliminated. Did I? Yeah, I used the idol when he faced Mike in the tie, but when he was up against Mike. And I think Scott's out here. Episode 12. because Lightning wasn't betrayed by Cameron this time, there's quite a difference. Obviously, that no one's teaming up with each other. And usually, Cameron gets attacked by the fire plant, and then Brick would probably get the flower. But I think Brick would probably go back to save Cameron. So Lightning would go in and win. I think Lightning would still win, but I think he would choose to take Brick to the would he? I think Brick wins. No, I choose Lightning, so him and Cameron would go. He would take Cameron to the finale, so he would third brace Brick. And I think, would that happen though? Brick's military training. It's whether or not I think Brick or Lightning. I think Brick would probably win it. And I think Brick would probably choose the Lightning. For his code of honor, he would want to face an honorable opponent. And he doesn't think Cameron would be in a suitable position to do that. So they each get winning endings. And this is the fight. Episode 13 is pinning down your opponent. So obviously Brick can make armor and his hand-to-hand combat. I think Brick actually wins the season. But let me know about that. You could have Cameron and Brick if you prefer. Or Lightning and Brick. Or you could even have Scott and Brick. If you wanted. But this is what... I'm just going to do this because I think it's what we're going to see would happen. And Brick has his code of honor, so he'd want to face a strong opponent. Unlike Lightning, who wanted an easy opponent in the finale. Thank you guys for watching. Comment, like, subscribe. This is the elimination order and how I think the season would have gone if Joe and the Lightning were to pick their teams. And yeah, peace, farewell.